President Obama announced an escalation of the war here in Afghanistan in December. 30,000 more troops, a whole new round of people saying the word surge. And now, post-General McChrystal, it is once again General Petraeus who is overseeing this surge, just like he did in Iraq. Here's a question, though. Part of the way we did counterinsurgency in Iraq was locking people up. At this point in the Iraq surge, we had over 20,000 people in prison. Here in Afghanistan now, it's less than 1,000. Even if you don't really care about prisons, if you only care about whether our troops still being in this country makes sense, whether there's any point to it, what's up with the prison thing? Our producer, Cory Gnazzo, went to the Parwan detention facility since we've been here. Hey, Cory, how are you?
Hey, Rachel. We went to Parwan province yesterday, about 30 miles north of here, which is very close to the Bagram airfield. And the U.S. is trying to make the world forget the alleged atrocities that took place there.
After years of incarceration by the U.S. military, these 7 men are now free. Tuesday afternoon, in a tent by the Parwan detention facility at Ashura, a traditional Afghan council, the freed men listened to speeches from Afghan and American officials. Before they were released, their cases were heard by an American military review board. The panel determined the men were no longer part of the Afghan insurgency, and so they were set on a course to be freed. But first, they had to personally pledge that they would renounce violence and support a peaceful Afghanistan.
We have not yet had a case, since our task force stood up in January, of an individual released who has been reapprehended or who we can confirm has gone back to the battlefield.
Another condition for release, a member of each of their families or tribes had to be their guarantor and participate in the Shura. Sadr Ali began his detention at the Bagram prison, which gained a notorious reputation from reports of prisoners being mistreated, tortured, even killed.
I was in Bagram facility before, and we recently got over here like in last December.
How does this compare to Bagram?
Like having to something else.
We visited the new Parwan facility, but were not allowed to film inside because the Geneva Conventions are seen as banning shots of prisoners while they're in detention, although the military provided this video from before it opened. Parwan is home to the more than 900 prisoners of this war. That is a much smaller number than the tens of thousands of people imprisoned in Iraq at any given time. Some in infamous, sometimes scandalous conditions. After the international outcry following the incidents at Abu Ghraib and Bagram, the Pentagon, with the support of the Obama administration, decided to build a new facility and established the military-led Joint Task Force 435 to run it.
It's a newer facility designed specifically as a theater internment facility, so the cells are designed to hold detainees. They're not prefabricated out of mesh.
The people who run Parwan say one of the facility's goals is to educate the detainees in the hopes that once they're released, they will be able to earn a living and not be tempted to join the Taliban. Another mission? To interrogate prisoners for information about the enemy in Afghanistan.
There are intelligence interrogations that take place pursuant to the Army Field Manual and Executive Order 13491, which governed how interrogations can take place in the United States or by United States personnel.
For now, the U.S. military is in charge. But if all goes well, that will change next year. That means the military must train and house hundreds of Afghan guards.
On the 15th of July, the first class will come in and work side by side with U.S. forces in a detainee housing unit, learning the skills of guard force personnel, and eventually we'll have enough forces available to us from the Afghan Army that we'll be able to turn this facility over. But we're well on track to begin the transition on 1 January.
Cory, that's amazing footage on a part of this that doesn't get talked about very often. On that issue of the handover, didn't they originally have a later deadline plan for the handover?
They did. Originally, it was going to start in January 2012, and the Afghan Ministry of Defense would start taking over Parwan. But McChrystal decided to move it up to January of next year, so they need to get those Afghan prison guards trained fast.
Amazing. That's how this war is going to end, handing over basic governance, things like prisons, things that Americans and Westerners are doing here now, to the full control of the Afghan government. And maybe they'll be able to handle it, and maybe they won't, but it will be up to them. Knowing we're leaving is what's making them stand up to do this now. The deadline for leaving It's driving all of this. Cory Gnazzo, senior producer on The Rachel Maddow Show, an excellent travel companion. Thank you for going out and doing that.
My pleasure.
Good to have you here, Cory. Still ahead, Richard Engel and I in Kabul in a way I really could not have imagined before I got here. looks like lunch.
This is tripe, and they keep the heads because you can make soup, and it also shows that it's fresh. Because if the heads and the eyes were all dried out, then it would show that it's old intestine, and we're not having that for lunch.
We're not. I don't know. Those goat heads look very fresh.
Yeah.
The Rachel Maddow Show is live from Kabul. Please stay with us.